My mother-in-law called me a witch and demanded to wear white. Here's what happened. In a peaceful town shaded by tall oak trees, Emma is preparing for her dream wedding day with Ethan, her high school sweetheart. But just before their happiness is about to begin, Ethan's mother, Margaret, drops a bombshell. She demands to wear a white dress, walk down the aisle as if she were the bride, and calls Emma a witch who has stolen her son. Will Emma endure this, or will she explode to protect her love? A dark secret from the past is about to erupt, pulling the entire family into the brink of destruction. In an American suburban town where every street is lined with towering oak trees, curving around red brick houses surrounded by white fences, the atmosphere is always peaceful and picturesque, especially in the evening when the sunset paints the sky golden and casts long shadows of the trees on the ground. This scenery always brings Emma a sense of calm, a place she was born and raised, where she feels she belongs. Emma, a strong young woman who respects tradition, stands before her family's red brick house, holding a notebook with notes for the upcoming wedding. Her wedding to Ethan, her high school love, is one of the most important events in her life. They have been together since their school days, when Ethan was an optimistic, strong, and ambitious young man, and Emma was a gentle girl who always believed in love and family values. Together, they have faced many challenges, from college exams to trivial arguments about small things in life. Now, they are preparing for a major milestone. Their wedding will be the official union of two hearts, a new beginning for their journey ahead. Emma imagines the day they walk down the aisle, holding hands under the glow of twinkling lights, exchanging promises for a happy future. However, the tranquility in Emma's life is shattered when Margaret, Ethan's mother, appears. Although she always seems polite and friendly to Emma, she has always been someone she feels a bit wary of. Margaret is a strong woman with very clear opinions on everything, especially about her son. Recently, Margaret sent Emma a letter written in bold red ink. The words in the letter made Emma stop and reread it in surprise and pain. The letter said, "Emma, I cannot accept the fact that my son is marrying a girl like you. You have enchanted Ethan, like a witch, and now you want to walk down the aisle in a white dress, as if you want to take on the role of the bride. Stay away from my son if you don't want to regret it." This letter was a heavy shock for Emma. She couldn't believe that Margaret could write such words, as if she had no right to her own life. She remembered the sweet moments with Ethan, like when they carved their names into the oak tree in the garden, marking the strength of their love. How could there be deceit in this love? How could she be called a witch when her feelings were sincere? Without manipulation or deceit, Emma felt anger and hurt creeping into her heart, but she didn't want those emotions to control her. She couldn't let Margaret destroy her happiness. She loved Ethan, and she knew that love was real. But she also understood that not everyone in his family would easily accept the change. When Emma met Ethan again, she decided to confront him about his mother's letter. But Ethan, the one she loved and trusted, just quietly listened without saying much. He loved Emma. But there was something Emma always felt, his indecisiveness. Ethan was easily manipulated by his mother, unable to stand up for what he truly wanted. This weighed heavily on Emma's heart as she realized that she not only had to fight his mother, but also the weakness within him. As each day passed, Emma felt herself being pushed to the brink, having to endure not only the pressure from Ethan's family, but also protect her own love. She didn't know what to do to prove that her love for Ethan was real, that she deserved her place in his life. Margaret's letter had ignited an unwanted battle, but Emma was determined not to surrender. She had to fight not just for her love, but for herself. Emma and Ethan's engagement party was held at a lakeside restaurant, where the romantic atmosphere was filled with the soft glow of twinkling lights, creating a perfect picture for a happy evening. The gentle sound of a violin played, filling the air with a love song, promising a sweet future for the couple. Smiles and cheerful conversations passed through meticulously decorated tables, as friends and family from both sides came together to celebrate. But for Emma, things weren't as expected. Margaret, Ethan's mother, whom Emma had been hoping would be present on this special day, suddenly wasn't there. At first, Emma didn't understand the reason, thinking maybe she was busy with something else. But when Ethan announced that his mother wasn't comfortable and wouldn't attend, Emma couldn't help but feel that something was wrong. It was like a crack, and doubt began to creep into her heart. After the party, when all the guests had left, Ethan decided to confront his mother. Emma stood to the side, her heart aching as she saw the look on Ethan's face, confusion and clear discomfort. Ethan had asked his mother to join the family dinner, but Margaret remained silent, then began to cry as she recounted her own painful past. "You don't understand, Ethan," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "When I was pregnant with you, my family refused to hold a wedding because they said it was embarrassing. They said I brought shame to the family. I've had to bear that pain my whole life, and now I can't let you make the same mistake. I can't let Emma walk down the aisle in a white dress, looking like a perfect bride. She will steal my son." Margaret's words were a shock to Emma. She couldn't understand why she would think that she wanted to take her son. Throughout their relationship, Emma had always tried her best to fit in and become a part of Ethan's family. But it seemed that wasn't enough for Margaret. Though Emma's heart was aching, she remained silent. But when Margaret asked her to wear a beige dress instead of white, claiming it was to give way to her, Emma's patience began to wear thin. She couldn't sit still, couldn't stand by and accept this humiliation any longer. Instead of standing by Emma's side, Ethan began arguing with her. "You're being selfish. Emma, you don't understand what my mother has been through. She loves me more than anyone else in this world, but you don't sympathize with her. You only think about yourself and not about how my mother feels." His words were like a punch to Emma's heart. She felt like a stranger in her own relationship. The love she had for Ethan was real, but now she realized his love wasn't strong enough to stand up for her against his mother's control. Emma felt like everything she had trusted, everything she had hoped for, was crumbling before her eyes. She turned and walked away, feeling as if she could barely breathe. She drove away from the party and headed to the familiar park where she and Ethan used to date, where the old oak tree still stood, like a witness to their love. The moonlight shone through the branches, casting long shadows on the ground, and Emma sat there, unable to stop the tears from falling. Under the moonlight, she wondered if her love still mattered. Could she continue being with someone who couldn't stand up for her, someone who couldn't face his own family? She recalled the first time they carved their names on the oak tree, when they talked about their future. Had everything changed because of a white dress? A claim that wasn't even true. In that moment, Emma transitioned from a girl who endured to a woman determined to protect her happiness. She couldn't keep suffering under the pressure from Margaret and Ethan's indecisiveness. She needed someone who could stand up for her, for their love. She couldn't keep sacrificing herself for someone who couldn't stand firm before his family. Meanwhile, Ethan, though loving Emma, revealed his weakness. He was still too dependent on his mother, unable to break free from her shadow. This disappointed Emma, but at the same time, she understood that Ethan was facing an internal battle, one he wasn't strong enough to win. The scene of Emma sitting alone under the moonlight, tears streaming down her face, became a deeply emotional moment. Each tear seemed like a part of her had shattered, but also served as the motivation for her decision to not let anyone destroy her dream of happiness. The audience could feel the injustice and pressure Emma had to endure, and they became curious about the future of her relationship with Ethan. Would he change and stand by her side, or would she have to continue fighting alone? The small coffee shop, where Emma and Ethan had once shared romantic dates, now became the scene of a tense confrontation between them. The dim light from the lanterns hanging overhead cast soft streaks of light on the old wooden table. The atmosphere was a blend of the quiet sound of coffee dripping, the clinking of spoons and cups, and the heavy sighs of the two of them. Emma sat across from Ethan, nervously holding her coffee cup, but her mind was elsewhere. As someone who always prided herself on staying calm in difficult situations, Emma found it impossible to control her emotions today. She was exhausted from everything that had happened to the words of Ethan's mother, the times she had to stand alone in this relationship, and most of all, she was tired of feeling forgotten and unprotected. She needed a firm decision from Ethan, and she was ready to issue an ultimatum. "Ethan," Emma began, her voice slightly hoarse but still strong. "I can't continue like this. I love you, but I can't live in your dependency on your mother. I need you to choose between me and her. If you want to marry me, I need you to postpone the wedding for a year for us to truly understand each other, and you need to reduce contact with Margaret, attend therapy, and be able to stand firm before your family." She paused, not wanting to look him in the eye for fear of seeing hesitation. In truth, Emma was too tired. She couldn't love someone who couldn't protect her, someone who always let his mother make all the decisions. She couldn't continue living in the shadows of decisions that weren't hers. Ethan sat still, his eyes filled with confusion. He knew he loved Emma, but the bond with his mother was something he couldn't easily break. A wave of guilt surged within him. His mother had been the one person who had always been there for him, loved him, and protected him since childhood. But now, he had to face a decision he was not mentally prepared for. He hesitated for a long moment before speaking. "Emma, I don't know what to do. My mother, she has given me everything, and I can't just disregard her. You don't understand. I can't hurt my mother." Emma looked at him, her heart aching. She could clearly sense the inner conflict in Ethan's eyes, but she also realized that without change, this relationship would never move forward. She didn't want to live in the darkness of indecision. "I understand," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But if you can't choose, I can't continue. I need a man who can stand up for me. For us. I can't forever live under the shadow of your mother." Ethan sat in silence, but Emma's words struck him deeply. He felt hurt, because deep down, he knew that the reason she was in pain was because he couldn't stand by her side. After that meeting, Ethan still couldn't make a decision right away, but he felt that something was changing within him. The worry about Emma, about their relationship, was no longer just scattered thoughts. Every night, when lying in bed, he couldn't stop thinking about the ultimatum Emma had given him. He loved her, but he also couldn't deny his connection to his mother. Then, one morning, as Ethan was scrolling through social media, a post from Emma appeared on her personal page. She shared her story about the tension in her relationship with Margaret and what she had been enduring. But what startled Ethan were the comments from the community. Mama's boy and no backbone appeared under the post. The criticism not only targeted him, but also served as a powerful wake-up call. Ethan felt his heart tighten. These comments were not just empty words. They were a reflection of him, a man who couldn't stand up to protect the one he loved. As Ethan read those comments, the pain surged within him. He didn't want to be like that. He didn't want to forever be known as Mama's boy in the eyes of others. He looked at himself and realized it was time for a change. Time to grow up and make the right choice. His gaze, once filled with hurt, gradually turned to resolve. He understood that if he wanted true happiness, he had to bravely face the truth and decide his future. Although he was still worried about his mother's opposition, Ethan knew that he couldn't keep living under her control. Emma, now, had become the strong woman he admired. She had set clear boundaries, not just for herself, but for their love. Ethan understood that if he couldn't stand firm and protect this love, he would lose everything. The audience could feel the change in Ethan, an important turning point in his journey of growing up. However, the worry still lingered. Would he be able to hold his ground and continue fighting for his love? Margaret's old wooden house, a place Emma had only ever passed through during brief visits, now became the scene of the greatest emotional storm in her life. The house smelled of damp wood, the characteristic scent of old, long-standing homes, making Emma feel suffocated and uneasy. The ticking of the clock echoed steadily, like a reminder of time relentlessly moving forward, waiting for no one. Dusty mementos were scattered throughout, creating an atmosphere like a tense theater, where everyone would have to face the undercurrents about to erupt. Ethan and Emma walked into the living room, where Margaret was sitting. She looked at them with a cold gaze, as though everything happening was just a game she still controlled. Ethan, with a determination Emma had never seen before, began the conversation with a series of questions and clear accusations. "Mom, I can't just stand by and watch you treat Emma like this anymore," Ethan said, his voice strong but also filled with concern. "You've sent hateful messages, set up dates for me without asking for my opinion, and then you called Emma a witch. I can't understand why you're doing this." Margaret listened, but instead of rebutting or apologizing, she just smiled in a fake, hollow way. "Ethan, I love you like my own son, and as for Emma, I love her like my daughter, but that doesn't mean I can't worry about you. I just want to protect you from things that aren't good for you," she said in a sweet tone, as if unaware that her words had no sincerity at all. When Ethan tried to continue, emphasizing that their love was not something she could destroy, Margaret finally couldn't contain her anger. She exploded, yelling at both of them. "Emma, she's the one who's stealing my son. She's made you neglect your family, that caused you to stop studying well, and now she wants to marry you. She doesn't deserve you." This was the first time Emma had seen Margaret truly reveal her weakness, the anger she couldn't hide, and her unreasonable words, which hurt not only Emma, but also Ethan. She felt a wave of frustration rise in her chest, but she remained silent. However, when Margaret continued to blame and paint a tragic picture of herself, Emma could no longer remain patient. "You call me a witch, but you're the one who's manipulating everything," Emma suddenly shouted, breaking the silence. Her voice was sharp, filled with rage, causing the room to feel suffocating. Emma's words were like a shock, waking everyone up from the illusions they had been living under. This was not just a battle between her and Margaret, but a battle of love and truth. Before anyone could respond, the door opened, and David, Ethan's father, along with Robert, Emma's father, walked into the room. Both men, from different generations but powerful figures in their families, immediately sensed the tension in the air. Margaret, quickly noticing the shift in everyone's attitude, rushed to play the victim. She sat down, covering her face with her hands, and began to cry. "You don't understand. Ethan, my son, has attacked me. All I've ever wanted was to protect you, to keep you from making the same mistakes I did." But David, though familiar with his ex-wife's antics, could no longer hold back. He turned to look at her, his voice strange, filled with truth that no one could deny. "Margaret, have you really forgotten you're not the victim here? You cheated on me while we were engaged, and that's why we never married. You destroyed your own dream, and you can't blame anyone else." The room fell silent for a moment. These words weren't just a statement, they were a real shock to everyone. Margaret, who had always tried to portray herself as a protective mother, now couldn't hide her dark past. She sat quietly, still covering her face, her eyes empty. Emma felt the change in the atmosphere. Not only had she won the battle against Margaret, but she had also won over herself. As for the first time, she stood up to protect what was hers. Throughout this time, She had always felt like the loser, but now Emma felt stronger than ever. Ethan, no longer the weak young man, also stood firm before his mother. "Mom, if you don't change, I'll cut off all contact with you. I can't keep living under your control. I love Emma, and I won't let anyone destroy our love." Ethan's words were a wake-up call. He stood by Emma, not only because of her, but also for the growth he had found within himself. Margaret, unable to control herself any longer, collapsed into the chair, crying uncontrollably. But despite her tears, she still didn't apologize. The tension remained unresolved, and everyone knew this was just a part of the long battle ahead. The audience could feel the drama of this moment. Emma, with courage and determination, had protected herself. But would Margaret change? And would Ethan truly stand firm to protect this love? All of this was still unresolved, and the story continued. On the way back from Margaret's house, Ethan's car rolled through the empty streets, the streetlights casting alternating patches of light and shadow across their faces. The air outside was cold, but inside the car, the tension filled the small space. Emma sat quietly, looking out the window, her hand gripping the armrest tightly as her mind stayed trapped in the scene at Margaret's house. The words of Margaret, Ethan's tears, everything seemed to still echo in her mind. Ethan sat beside her, his hand still gripping the steering wheel, but his eyes were lost in the void. He was thinking about everything that had just happened, the conflicts, the accusations from his mother, and the inner turmoil he was experiencing. But there was a moment, as their car passed a desolate stretch of road, when Margaret suddenly pretended to collapse, clutching her chest and gasping for air. The sight of this made Ethan immediately stop the car, his heart skipping a beat when he saw his mother in that condition. Emma looked at Ethan with a determined but pained expression. She understood that no matter what his mother did, he was still her son, and the conflict within him wouldn't disappear easily. "I know she's faking, Ethan. She just wants to make you waver. Don't let yourself get caught in this game anymore," Emma said gently, but her tone was firm, with an undeniable determination. She knew that only Ethan could stop this manipulation, but it wouldn't be easy. Ethan looked at Emma, tears streaming down his face. He choked up, as if all the emotions he had been holding inside finally had the chance to pour out. "You don't understand, Emma," he said, his voice heavy. "My mom has given me everything, taught me everything, but she also made me believe that my dad was the bad guy. She always said he wasn't good, that he abandoned her, abandoned me. I never really understood everything until now. Since they had started their relationship, Emma had seen Ethan as a strong man who always protected her. But now, as he shared his painful childhood memories, she realized that Ethan was still a child trapped in the shell his mother had created for him, unable to break free from her control. My mom made me think I couldn't truly love my dad because I believed he was the bad guy. I made that mistake again, letting her control my life, letting her take everything. But I was wrong, Emma. I've missed out on so much, and I've hurt you." Emma could no longer stay silent. She turned to look at Ethan, and at that moment, she saw maturity gradually appearing in him. He was no longer the weak boy he had once been. His words, his outpouring of emotion, were signs of the awakening she had been hoping for. She reached out and took his hand, feeling the tremors in his heart, but also the resolve he had found within himself. "Ethan, I believe in you, but you have to choose. You have to stand up for yourself, for us, for this love. I love you, but I can't keep living in the shadow of your mother." Ethan looked into Emma's eyes, his tears now dried, but a damp trace remained on his face. "You're right. You're completely right. Emma, I will change. I promise I will go to therapy. I will reduce contact with my mom, and I will start living for myself, for you, and for this love." In that moment, Emma felt a profound change in Ethan. She no longer just saw his love for her, but the awakening within him. He was no longer the hesitant boy, no longer the man standing under his mother's shadow. He had made up his mind and was ready to face the difficult changes ahead. "I love you, Emma. I promise I will protect you," Ethan said, his voice full of resolve and strength. He squeezed her hand, as if making an eternal vow. Emma looked into his eyes, feeling a renewed sense of hope, a belief in their future. Outside, the dim streetlights shone on their faces, creating an emotional picture, although their future was still filled with challenges. At this moment, Emma felt a certainty in her heart. She knew they had overcome the biggest challenge in their lives, Ethan's awakening and his determination to protect their love. In that moment, Emma felt an unusual sense of relief, although she knew there would still be difficulties. At least now, she and Ethan had built a solid foundation for the future together. She felt loved and protected, something she had always longed for. But at the same time, she felt a tinge of guilt, because although Ethan had stood by her, his love for his mother would still be a significant challenge in the future. The audience could feel the strong transformation in Ethan as he began to truly mature and was ready to fight for his love. But they also worried about the mother-son relationship between him and Margaret. as it remained a deep bond that wouldn't change easily. Would Ethan be able to maintain his stance? Or would he be pulled back into his mother's control? A week after the intense confrontation with Margaret, Emma stood in front of the old wooden house, the place where everything began. The house still maintained its usual quiet appearance. But today, for Emma, it felt like a haunting place, where buried memories and emotions now erupted forcefully. She held in her hand a handwritten letter and a bouquet of chrysanthemums, Margaret's favorite flower. The early morning light filtered through the oak trees where Emma and Ethan had carved their names, shining down onto the garden that had now become a symbol of love and struggle. The surroundings were peaceful, but in Emma's heart, there was an anxiety she couldn't shake. She wasn't sure if her letter would help mend their relationship, but she believed it was the first step toward moving forward for everyone involved. Emma had decided not to tear apart the mother-son bond, but she was also clear that Margaret needed to respect the boundaries she had set. Emma's letter was heartfelt but firm. She wrote that she desired a peaceful and respectful relationship, that she could no longer stand by and let Margaret manipulate her life, but she didn't want to destroy the familial love between Ethan and his mother. Carefully, Emma placed the bouquet of chrysanthemums on the doorstep as a greeting, a way to begin the process of reconciliation. She wanted to show respect, but at the same time, she wanted Margaret to know that she could no longer remain silent in the face of her wrongdoings. The scene shifted to Emma's house, where the peaceful atmosphere was suddenly broken by the doorbell. Emma opened the door and was surprised to find Margaret standing before her. This time, she didn't carry the arrogance or coldness she usually did. Instead, she seemed cautious and vulnerable, holding a small box in her hands. "Emma," Margaret began, her voice choked with emotion, but this time, it wasn't filled with criticism or disdain. She handed the box to Emma. I brought you this wedding dress. It's mine, from when I was young. I thought maybe you would understand." Emma opened the box and saw the old wedding dress, slightly faded from time, yet still retaining its graceful beauty. Margaret looked at her with teary eyes, her voice trembling as she continued. "I just wanted to keep Ethan with me. I didn't want to lose my son the way I lost my dream. But now I realize I've lost both of you." Emma stood silent, not speaking, but inside, she felt a strange sensation. She could feel the rare sincerity in Margaret's words, but she also couldn't forget the hurt she had caused. She felt confused, unsure of what to do with the mixed emotions in her heart. She hadn't fully forgiven, but part of her recognized that Margaret was trying to change, even if just a little. "Margaret," Emma said, her voice soft but firm, "I can't forget what happened, but I also don't want to destroy everything. Ethan and I have decided to go to therapy. We will build our future on honesty and respect." Margaret fell silent, her red eyes fixed on Emma. Though she couldn't fully apologize, Emma could sense the regret in her, a late regret. This made Emma feel as though she had taken another step in healing the wounds, not just for herself, but also for Margaret. In the next scene, in the stillness of the moment, Margaret and Emma's eyes met. No words were spoken, but in that instant, both women understood they were on a long journey of healing, of starting anew. This wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was a small step toward reconciliation. Ethan entered, seeing the meeting between his mother and girlfriend, and he understood that it was time to truly mature. He walked over to Emma, took her hand, and promised, "I will protect you. Emma, I will not let my mother manipulate us anymore." Emma looked into Ethan's eyes, the streetlights casting a soft glow, creating a beautiful, dreamlike moment. A sense of relief gradually enveloped her because she knew that Ethan's change was real. He had realized that love needed to be protected and cherished, and he was no longer afraid to face his mother. However, the lingering anxiety about his relationship with his mother still weighed on Emma's heart. She knew this was just the first step, but what mattered most was that all three of them were trying to change, to move forward in life. Despite the many challenges that still lay ahead, the audience could feel the fragile but hopeful reconciliation. A reconciliation not only between Emma and Margaret, but also between Emma and Ethan. They not only found love, but also found respect and mutual acceptance. Emma and Ethan stood by the oak tree, where they had once carved their names into the bark to prove their love. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting light and shadows on their faces, creating a beautiful and hopeful image. The oak tree, with its old carvings, had now become a symbol of new beginnings, a beginning not only for their love, but also for their journey of growth and change. They stood there, hands tightly clasped, hearts full of determination, ready to face the challenges ahead. Margaret had begun therapy, a small but important step in her healing journey. She realized that she needed to change, that she couldn't continue living in suffering and manipulation, and that love couldn't be built from control but from respect and sharing. Although the road ahead was long, her willingness to face her past was a positive sign, opening up opportunities for change. Love and family are not always easy. They require courage to face pain, to set healthy boundaries, and to open up to forgiveness. Change doesn't erase the past, but it can create a new space, a new opportunity to build the future. Emma and Ethan learned that only when both can face the pain, recognize their mistakes, and change, can they truly begin again. Emma and Ethan's journey would undoubtedly be full of challenges. The scars of the past wouldn't fade easily, and their relationship with Margaret would need more time to fully heal. However, their growth, especially in facing difficult issues and being ready to protect their love, would be the strong foundation for their future. Margaret, although beginning her healing journey, would need more time to fully change, but Emma and Ethan knew they wouldn't stop. Together, they would continue to build a new future. Their love, though tested by many trials, would continue to grow stronger and more steadfast, for they had learned to love, forgive, and cherish the true values in life.